All right, we're going to go ahead and call the City Commission meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, good evening, everybody. Good steamy evening, I guess I should say. We're finally feeling some heat coming our way in our community. Al, we'll start with roll call.
Brunig.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Mybaum.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Moser.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
Deputy City Attorney Barrett.
Here.
All right, with roll call, after roll call, I would ask for approval of the minutes of the work session meeting of May 23rd, 2022, and the regular meeting of May 23rd, 2022.
Move to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on the joint minutes? Anybody in the public? All those in favor of approving both the work session minutes and the regular scheduled meeting minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And anybody abstaining? Okay, they are approved. Next on our agenda is schedule of bills. What is your pleasure?
Move to pay the bills.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the bills? Anybody in the public want to comment on the bills? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybaum.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, tonight, if you looked at our agenda, we have some special guests. I don't think they usually come to City Commission meetings. Those faces, while very familiar to me, aren't necessarily because of a City Commission chamber. You know, it's rare for a community probably to be able to recognize state champions maybe once in a year. This is the second time now we've had a group in front of this commission to be able to recognize some outstanding athletes in the Yankton School District who brought home another state championship to Yankton. And so we're very excited. I say this all the time. I feel like every time I do a proclamation, they're very special. And proclamations usually are. It's something that we don't take for granted and we don't do lightly. But I have a former Buck tennis player, so tonight is always means more to me to be mayor to recognize a team my son played on. So, proclamation for high school boys tennis teams. Whereas Yankton Bucks tennis requires preparation, commitment, coaching, and practice throughout the year. And whereas teamwork is required skill in most athletic endeavors today, and whereas the Yankton High School boys tennis team completed the season with an outstanding 22 and 2 dual record, and whereas the 2022 Yankton High School boys tennis team set school records in season wins, season win percentage, state finish, conference finish, state points scored, conference points scored, and total match wins. And whereas the 2022 Yankton High School boys tennis team earned their first ever ESD conference championship, and it keeps going, whereas the 2022 Yankton High School boys tennis team earned their first ever state A championship. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Stephanie Mosier, on behalf of the City Commission, do hereby thank all of the team members, coaches, sponsors, parents, guardians, and fans for all of their hard work and effort they put to earn this state honor. Will you please join me in a round of applause? Outstanding job by an outstanding group of young men. I would ask that the players and coaches please come forward, and I would also ask my city commissioners to join me out front for a picture congratulating the team. And I've already warned them, I don't know, Coach Haig, if it's you or your Captain Gage, they're going to say a few words on behalf of the team, but we'll do that after the picture.
Like each other, we're almost like. Pretend like you like each other.
Kind of go either or. Sort of thing. There you go.
It's pretty good. My dad was the coach when Yankton won its first cross-country championship, so good job, guys. That was eons ago, by the way.
All right, Coach Haig finally has to listen to me now, so this is awesome. Role reversal, high tees. Coach, we didn't do this necessarily with soccer because there was a lot of players when the soccer team was here, but if you wouldn't mind introducing your coaching staff and the players that helped secure this victory, and then just tell us a little bit about the season, how you went in, and kind of what some of your goals were, and anything else you want to share with the commission.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission and Mayor Mosier especially for this honor that's that the guys earned this season. It's, I guess, like you said, not every day that something like this happens. We're very proud of the guys, and it was a fantastic season, one for the record books, obviously, and you know, sad it had to come to an end, but we had a lot of, as you'll see, I've had a lot of seniors on the team this year, and each one of these seniors has bigger and better things on the horizon, there's no doubt, and we've got a fine young group of kids coming in to kind of, you know, step in their place. So starting off with my assistant coaches, Vanessa Rockney has been with me for quite a while. Go ahead and stand up, Vanessa, so we'll give a wave to the crowd, you know. And Mike Briggs. Both of these guys do a fantastic job helping out. They're the brains of the operation. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You know, they get to be good cop, and I get to be the bad cop every now and then, and I think it works out pretty well. And then our seniors, led by Gage Becker, played number 1 singles for us and number 1 doubles. Ryan Schulte played number 2 singles and number 2 doubles for us. Keaton List played number 5 singles and number 2 doubles for us. And Dylan Ridgway played number 3 doubles for us and stepped in on the singles court when needed and did a fantastic job for us. And then our underclassmen, Harrison Kratzky, played 4 singles and 3 doubles for us. And Miles Kratzky played 6 doubles or 6 singles for us. And then we had Zach Briggs playing number 3 doubles and number 1 singles for us. So opposite. Three singles, 1 doubles. That's what I said. So this team did a fantastic job. They set their goals very, very high early on. This group of players would have stepped on the court for the first time kind of together in 2020 when COVID came around and the season was canceled. So they were shorted a season a little bit in that respect, like every other tennis team was as well. But since that would have been the first time that this nucleus was really playing together cohesively as a unit, I think it put a little bit of added pressure on some of these guys because they knew what they could do. They knew that they had the talent, and they knew they had the motivation, and they set their goals very, very high. And they came in the following season, many of them as juniors, and kind of, again, playing together as a unit for the first time, and they finished second in the state a year ago. So we knew going into this season that we weren't going to sneak up on anyone anymore. They had kind of put the bullseyes on their back, and they wore that like a badge of honor all season long, and never backed away from an opponent ever whenever they're on the court. This team is as tough as it comes. There's no doubt. They, a tennis match can be a roller coaster from beginning to end. There's no doubt about it. You've got to, ride the high as long as you can and weather the lows. And this team does a masterful job of doing both of those things. This team set every school record there was to be set for a team. At the Yankton High School. Gage Becker is now the #1 all-time singles wins leader. And he played, I think, 6 years, or it would have been 6 years, 5 years, I guess, because of the COVID year. A couple years at Flight 6, 1 year at Flight 5, and would have been 3 years at Flight 1 without the COVID year. So that's an impressive achievement in itself. I know for a fact we have a couple underclassmen that will definitely be gunning for that, and so we'll see how long Gage gets to stay on top of that podium. Harrison. But in all reality, this was a dream season, not only for myself, but I hope for each of the guys. I hope that the memories that they made, the friendships they made, last far longer than any of the awards or recognition that they've received for this year, and I really feel that will probably happen. So again, thank you, Commission, thank you, Mayor Mosier. We do appreciate it, and this, I guess, is the buck signing out for 2022.
Well, on behalf of the entire commission, our congratulations again. It's always exciting to hang. I think Darcy, I saw you put it on Facebook. Mike's been gunning for banners to be hung in that gym since you guys moved here, and it's going to be an honor to see that fall next school season when they're able to recognize that. So congratulations again to the 2022 State A boys tennis team. All right, with that, we'll give you a couple minutes. I said anybody that wants to stay for the rest of the city commission meeting is welcome to do that. Otherwise, we'll give you a couple minutes to allow the team to head out and enjoy the rest of the evening. Oh, and go to tennis league. All right. Already working towards next year. I love it. All right, with that, under our routine business, next on the agenda is our city manager's report. So with that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Leon.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, and public that is either here or listening on YouTube. Our mission is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive. I wanted to talk a little bit about sales tax this evening. Those numbers came out today, or Al brought them up today from the office, and so I want to visit with you and the public about those. I think they were emailed to you. If not, they will be tomorrow morning. So we were up for the month of May, 3.09%. That gives us a cumulative difference of, for the year, 5.87% being up. That's all three pennies combined. Triple B, just so you have an idea, was up 8.74%, which gives us a cumulative difference of 7.21%. All good news, and we're happy to see that in the black. But I also, as I mentioned earlier, want folks to keep in mind inflation. So we need to keep an eye on things. Certainly, we're headed into our busy tourism year and typically our good months for sales tax. However, I think we need to be cognizant that the cost of things are getting higher as well, and are the costs, will inflation be higher than what our revenue projections are? So, but still good to be in the positive. So we want to take a look at that total tax due number. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on that each month here as we head into summer. You can analyze that and ask any questions of myself or Al that you would have about sales tax. Thank you to all those involved in RibFest who volunteered, attended, put on, organized, all those things. There was a nice crowd downtown in the Meridian District for RibFest. Lots of good food and a lot of fun, and no incidences according to the Yankton Police Department, so that's a good thing. Great weather and a great event again in Yankton. Also, there was a nice turnout, a very big turnout for Saturday Kids in the Park with the Cuckoo Kangaroo, organized by Yankton Parks and Recreation, and I believe sponsored by Avera this weekend. So we were fortunate to have a great turnout and great weather there. I didn't attend Cuckoo, but I was in the pool and I heard people going cuckoo for Cuckoo Kangaroo. I thought it was for Cocoa
I
Puffs.
did believe I issued a challenge to Commissioners Maibaum, Schramm, and Brunick of singing a song from us from the concert since they had little ones. Did you need more practice time? Yes. Okay. Continue then.
I think in order to keep our meeting on track, that's probably a good idea. You have a work session in your consent calendar. So as between meetings here, when people were shuffling around, I was visiting with the mayor about, is that a good time to visit about the aquatic center and some of the things that we talked about in the budget? I'm seeing heads go up and down, yes. So we'll plan for a work session on the 27th of June, 2 weeks from today. It'll be in your consent calendar. The topic will then be discussion of the aquatics center and the financing that we visited about. Also, for the public's benefit, the commission had previously, before this meeting, a capital improvement plan budget meeting, and they didn't quite finish, and they wanted to wrap up yet here after regular business. So there is an executive session item this evening on the agenda, and that means it's a closed session to the commission to talk about the items that we're allowed to talk about contractually and under South Dakota statute. But the budget meeting is public, so once reconvened, if you want to stay and hear about the two TIDs that we're going to be talking about, then that's a public meeting that folks can listen to and attend. So I wanted to make sure people were clear on that in an effort of transparency. You have a lot on your agenda, Madam Mayor, so unless there's questions for me, I would let the commission move through that.
I just wanted to ask if there is someone who wants to stick around for the budget discussion, can we do that and then go to executive session? Is that allowed, or is our agenda set and that's how we have to do it?
I think you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
So if you'd like to add that to maybe other business, I think.
Okay. Just, I can think of maybe one person in the audience who wants to stick around for the rest of our budget discussion, so.
I thought we were trying to get rid of Charlie. Okay, that's a great idea. No wonder you thought of it. We'll talk about the TIDs under other business then, Mayor.
Any other questions for the city manager? All right, seeing no mics come on. Next on the agenda is public appearances. This is the time and the place for anybody in the community that wants to address the commission on an item not on the agenda tonight. Seeing no movement, we will move on to the consent agenda. Number one is to establish June 27, 2022 as the date for a public hearing on the request for a transfer of ownership of a retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota Farm wine for July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023 from Israel Montalvo, doing business as Chapiro's Tacos, to I&E LLC, doing business as Chapiro Tacos. Israel Montalvo member, that's at 100 East 4th Street here in Yankton. Number two is to establish June 27, 2022 as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events malt beverage on sale retailer's license and a special on sale wine retailer's license for one day, October 22nd, 2022 from the Center. Chris Thury, Executive Director, that is located at 900 Whiting Drive. Number three is a consideration of Memorandum 22-103, recommending approval of the application from LNC Leathernecks Marine Corps League and Auxiliary for July 9th, 2022. Number four is setting the date of June 27th, 2022 at 6 p.m. and here in the Commission Chamber for our next work session of the Yankton City Commission. And as just discussed during City Manager Leon's report, we will finish up our discussion on the Huther Family Aquatic Center. Number five is to establish June 27, 2022 as the date for a public hearing on the request for a special malt beverage on-off sale retailer's license for 4 days, which is August 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th of 2022 from Backspace Brewing Company, LLC, doing business as Backspace Brewing Company, Chris Allington, partner, and that is for music at the Meridian, which takes place down by the Meridian Bridge. Number six is consideration of Memorandum 22-113, recommending approval of an application from Martha's Crafts from August 12, 2022 through September 12, 2022. And finally, number seven under the consent agenda is consideration of Memorandum 22-115, recommending approval of the application from Whimsical Glass Creations from June 14th, 2022 through August 14th, 2022. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on the consent agenda? Anybody in the public? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And anybody abstaining? All right, consent agenda passes. Number three on the City Commission agenda is old business, and number one under that is consideration of Memorandum 22-96 regarding the request for a special malt beverage on sale retailer's license, a special on sale wine retailer's license for one day, July 12, 2022 from Yankton Area Arts. Julie Amsbury, Executive Director, and that will be located at Riverside Park. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number two under old business is consideration of Memorandum 22-97 regarding the request for a special events malt beverage on sale retailer's license and a special on sale wine retailer's license for one day, July 23rd, 2022 from the Center. Chris Thury, Executive Director, which is at 900, am I reading? Yes, okay. I was like backwards here. At 900 Whiting Drive. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 3 is consideration of memorandum 22-98 regarding the request for a special events malt beverage on sale retailer's license and a special on sale wine retailer's license for one day, July 8th, 2022 from the center. Chris Thury, Executive Director, again located at 900 Whiting Drive. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye. Number 4 is consideration of memorandum 22-99 regarding the request for a special events on sale liquor license for July 16th, 2022 from Stripes, Inc., doing business as Mojo's 3rd Street. Jeff Dayhoff, owner, and that is located at 106 East 3rd Street.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 5 is consideration of memorandum 22-100 regarding the request for a special events retail on sale liquor license for 4 days, which is in July, which is the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th of 2022 from Ben's Brewing Company, Ben Hanton, owner, at 222 West 3rd Street. But the location for these events will be the Music at the Meridian, which will be located down by the Meridian Bridge. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 6 is consideration of memorandum 22-110, which is a second reading and a public hearing to consider ordinance 1062, a rezoning from an A1 agricultural to a B3 central business district. Said track being bounded on the west by Broadway Avenue and running southeast for a distance of 300 feet, bounded on the north by Riverside Drive and running southward to the boundary of the Missouri River. The address is technically 305 Riverside Drive. The city of Yankton is the owner. If you don't recognize the address, this is for the old water treatment plant. Dave, maybe walk us through why we're looking at this before I ask for a motion.
Sure. So one of the unique things in Yankton and some other communities is that historically, many of the publicly owned properties like parks or where other city facilities are located, like infrastructure sorts of things, have been zoned agricultural for some reason. And there's never been a need to change it. If there's been a dramatic change in the occupancy, we've gone through a conditional use permit process to consider applying for a permit from ourselves, basically, as the city. In this instance, that portion of city-owned property where the old water treatment plant sits was one of those that's zoned agricultural. This proposed rezoning, which was initiated by the city, would simply change it to match the surrounding zoning district to the north. The remainder of the downtown, including the residences in the block to the north, are all zoned B3 Central Business District. So it is not an action establishing what may end up being an eventual occupant at the location, but it just matches the zoning to the rest of downtown, so other considerations can be discussed at a future date with future actions.
Thank you. Having heard what's being asked tonight, what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Yes, sir. You may step to the microphone. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening, everybody. Corey Stratman and my wife Melissa, 300 West Riverside Drive. I guess my concern would be the future plans for this. Is the footprint of the building going to change? Are you going to, are you going to build up? Are you going to block our view of the river? That's our concern.
Thank you. I would turn to either Dave or City Manager Leon who would like to answer that question or start with it.
So I think the city commission at this time right now is thinking about, is this space something that they would put together a request for proposals on? And what that means is really putting out sort of for lack of a better word, advertisement or indication that this is something that they may lease out to a private entity. And in that, if they decide to do that, and I don't think they're fully at that point yet, but if they would decide to move forward with that kind of a proposal, they can put limitations on that. They could say, it has to remain in its current footprint, or it couldn't have a second story, or it couldn't be altered in whatever way that they would want to. They might wait to do that if that's a concern of the neighborhood until they see what they get back as a proposal. But the intention is, I think, if the commission were to move forward with that, leasing out that space, that we would still own that property, and so they could put any kind of restrictions on a potential lessee that they wanted. So knowing that that's a concern of the neighborhood is beneficial to them, I think. And if they should so choose to move forward, I would guess there would be opportunity for neighbors to come and visit about other concerns that they might have, whether that be building up or landscaping or any other thing that could change the nature of the building.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Bet, thanks for your question. Anybody else in the public? All right, we do have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning. So Al, roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 7 is consideration of memorandum 22-114, which is a second reading and a public hearing to consider ordinance 1063, an ordinance creating a framework for relocation of a licensed medical marijuana establishment. I see you're turning on your mic. Awesome. I made notes, but I figured you'd be prepared to discuss this before I ask for a motion.
Yes, so initially, when we put together our medical marijuana ordinances and all the rules associated with marijuana and medical marijuana, we indicated that we're probably going to be coming back to you guys because we weren't going to be able to foresee everything that may or may not happen, and we're just doing the best we could with the information we had at the time. So this is a change to the ordinance, what you're looking at this evening, and really the change is to do with being able to transfer the relocation of a license. So that's not something we provided for in our first ordinance, but it has something that has come up now, and so this isn't just transferring it any old place. They can only transfer, to an already authorized location, meaning it's got to fall within all those restrictions that you put forward in your ordinance. So they can't just transfer it, next door in a residential, for example, or next to a school. It has to be within. And so we had that request, and Ross and his team with legal looked through that and found it to be, that's fine. If gives the property owners a little more flexibility in transferring things should they decide they want to. And I think the case we have in consideration is one that has identified a location that's suitable, and the Team Cannabis, as we call it, has looked at that, and we're going through that process, I believe, with the owner of the license. So happy to answer other questions. Otherwise, Mr. Barrett may have details for you if you have legal questions.
And again, this is not transfer of a license to another person. This is
Correct.
transferring the location of where they want to establish
Same
it.
license holder, just a different building, a different structure in the same, within the same confines that you set forward in the ordinance to begin with. It has to meet all those requirements as the previous location that was suggested.
And as I was reading this, the individual then would have to turn in a new application, repay the fee, and be approved as if they turned it in the first time. And then it would still have to go to the state, and the state would have to do their process again. Did I read that right?
Correct.
In this change?
And the applicant's aware of that, and they're already working through that process with our staff.
If they go back to the state, if there's a pool of others that have put their petition in for a location, do they face the random, or the draw again from the state essentially, or do they?
I do not believe so, no. They're the licensee, unless there would be some kind of, problem or issue, and that has not been the case with this applicant.
There is a process for transfer of location through the state that was not initially anticipated in the original ordinance you passed.
And the $1,500 application fee, we're basically parroting the original $1,500 fee, is that right?
Correct.
Is
Same, there is maybe a little bit of speed in that we know who the applicant is, but we still have to go through all the points and spend the staff time making sure that everything's copacetic.
Understood.
Can you remind me, is it staff approval of the new location, or does the commission also approve the new location as part of this process?
I believe it just has to fall within your ordinance, so we don't typically bring those forward to you if it falls within what we won't be bringing those forward to you as long as it falls within the confines of the ordinance. And this pending transfer does.
So then I know this doesn't necessarily apply to the question in front of us, but with the company that is applying for relocation, can you say at this point where they're looking to move to?
I would not say that, because I feel like that is because it's not voted on, not completed. They probably haven't fully purchased, so when that is available, I'll share that with the commission and the public.
Any other commission discussion on this? If not, I would ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. Any other commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Brunick.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye. Motion carries. On to new business on our agenda, and number one under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-108, recommending approval of the mayor's appointments for city commissioners to various city advisory boards and commissions. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye. Motion carries. Number two under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-104 regarding a change order number 1 and a final project acceptance and final payment for the 23rd Street from West City Limits Road to approximately 1300 West Street, and it's a street and utility project. Just to note, the memo had the wrong location, but the agenda is correct. So when you're looking at that address, I wanted to indicate that, and that there is a discrepancy in that. What is in your agenda is correct. This would be, if approved, a decrease of $8,618. It was originally budgeted at $835,965, so this would be $827,077, with over half the difference is being assessed in liquidated damages. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 3 under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-111 regarding resolution 22-24, a plat of Lot 1 Broadway addition with the legal address in your agenda packet. but the easier one is the location is the east side of the 2500 and 2600 blocks of Broadway Avenue. The city of Yankton is the owner. This is cemetery land. Before I ask for a motion, I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Leone and Dave or whomever to walk us through what this is detailing tonight.
I'll pretend I'm a planner, since I pretended that earlier I was, and I've pretended I was a marijuana cannabis license expert. But so my understanding that is tonight's action is simply just to create the lot. So it's currently, this portion of the property doesn't have any meets and bounds, and what you're doing here when you're platting it is to create that. So where you go with that in the future is entirely up to you, but in order to go anywhere, you need to be able to describe and say what it is. So that's basically what a plat does, is give us the ability to say, this is what piece of land we're talking about for any future action. How would I do, Dave?
Awesome. I'd have two more brief comments. One is that the courts have determined that this is not cemetery land. So that's something we got to be aware of. And the other is we found kind of a strange anomaly on the south end where part of 25th Street wasn't dedicated while we were doing our research. So this gives us the opportunity to fix that issue. We had north half of 25th Street, if you look at the plat, that was never dedicated historically. So it gives us a chance to fix that too.
Dave, before I ask for a motion or the pleasure of the City Commission, did this go through the Planning Commission?
Third point I should have made, it did go through the Planning Commission and they recommended approval as presented.
With that, I would ask what the pleasure of the commission is.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the City Commission? Dave, I just have a clarifying question. What do you mean the courts have determined this is not cemetery land? Is this something that we went through, and if it's not cemetery land as we've thought it to be, what is it?
So there's a lengthy process associated with some documents that weren't filed correctly way back in the early 1970s. And in order to create this plat, City Attorney Den Herder recommended that we go through a process to clarify the incorrect or partial recording that wasn't accurate at the time. And in doing so, the commission also, you may remember, discussed the future needs of the cemetery, and there's a threshold for how many years of space you need to maintain. And this property, through both of those processes, was released from any cemetery-related encumbrances. And as City Manager Leone said, this site, or this plat, simply identifies the area because it's kind of a strange, it's not an exact rectangle, so it can't really be described as meets and bounds. So it just identifies a piece of property that can be discussed in the future as the City Commission may wish. It has historically been zoned B2 highway business. So it is already zoned highway business along Broadway.
Any other commission discussion?
Quick question, out of curiosity, and maybe Bo might even be able to enlighten us a little bit on this. So South Dakota codified law, it's 472925. It specifically states that the State Department of Transportation may appropriate real property necessary for highway construction from real property owned by a cemetery corporation, no portion of which has at the time of the commencement of the condemnation action been used for burial purposes. So that whole area, since it hasn't been used for burial purposes, and I assume we're the cemetery corporation in this instance, if the state did want to come in and let's say they wanted to do a roundabout at 25th, or if they wanted to do 2 roundabouts, I don't know, or if they wanted to basically condemn it and take over that property, in theory they could. I know we're saying it's not, but there's no reason they couldn't, up until action that the City Commission may take.
I'm not the lawyer in the room, but everything that you read and quoted from SDCL in that instance makes sense, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I agree.
Any other commission discussion or questions on this? Anybody in the public? Please step to the podium, and even though everybody knows who you are, please state your name and your address.
Is this on? Yep, all right. Thank you. Charlie Gross, 1510 Burley in Yankton. So that we're all transparent here, this is just the first step that the city's taking in preparation of selling the property. Is that correct?
That's up to the commission, Charlie. If they, are looking to do that, that will be put on the agenda, and there'll be an opportunity for public input again on that. But they don't have that option without plating. So that has been something that the commission has talked about in the past and in the recent past.
Correct. I've been a part of several of those. Question for Dave Mingo. Was this land transferred by the Yankton Cemetery Association to the city? Or did I misunderstand what you said tonight?
The Cemetery Association in 1972 transferred all of their holdings, including this, to the city of Yankton at that point in time. And there were some discrepancies in how that transfer occurred, and that's what had to go through a court process to get reconciled here recently.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the public? All right, roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 4 is an introduction and first reading, consideration of memorandum 22-102, introduction and first reading of ordinance 1061, and setting June 27, 2022 as the date for a second reading and a public hearing on an ordinance that would create a wastewater surcharge to replace the current base or minimum wastewater rates. Can I get an introduction?
Introduced.
Number 5 is consideration of memorandum 22-107 regarding acceptance of the sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and street improvements for West Street and Dakota Street of the Summit Heights addition. This is in the amount of $675 to Jim Tramp, who was the developer. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 6 is consideration of memorandum 22-106 regarding acceptance of the utility and street improvements for Millie Lane, which is in the Dakota West Estates 2 edition. This is in the amount of $752.17. Steve Dratzman, developer. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 7 is an introduction and first reading of consideration of memorandum 22-105, an introduction and establishing a public hearing for June 27, 2022, as the date for a second reading and public hearing for the assessment project to pave Dakota Street between 12th Street and 15th Street. Can I get an introduction?
Introduced.
And number 8, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 22-116, recommending approval of resolution 22-27, a governor's office of economic development local infrastructure improvement grant agreement for improvements northwest of the intersection of 31st Street and Broadway Avenue. This is tied to the Paradigm Technologies project. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion?
Amy, can you talk a little bit about this grant and how it is dependent on the Paradigm project moving in, just so people understand that?
Sure. So just so everyone remembers, this LIP grant, Local Infrastructure Improvement Program grant, is the grant that will be utilized in cooperation with some of the improvements we're doing in North 33rd Street. So we'll talk a little bit about it as we talk about the TID summary here and other business. However, it's not just a grant you can apply for because, oh, you need a street, or, oh, it'd be good to extend infrastructure. It's a grant you can apply for only when you have been invited, and you're invited because there is a development that fits a number of criteria set forth by the state of South Dakota Governor's Office of Economic Development that to apply. So we have had other folks interested in that property. Of course, over time, they would have to meet certain criteria, certain development criteria, in order to be eligible for this kind of grant. So we were lucky to be able to have kind of the perfect storm of having somebody interested in the property, having this funding opportunity, and them meeting that criteria. And that's why we were invited to apply and awarded successfully. So what these actions basically do is allow us to move forward with accessing those dollars when the time is correct. So it isn't just something that, for example, somebody doing a small retail project or small and even maybe an industrial project, depending upon the criteria, could meet. It's pretty exclusive to certain development criteria.
Is it fair to say that these infrastructure improvements will also benefit what we're doing with the soccer complex?
Yeah, I mean, it benefits the whole area. You know, the soccer complex isn't party to the grant in that it didn't impact, it wouldn't meet that kind of development, doesn't meet the criteria, but certainly overall in that area. And, you know, having that development out there is what could drive future development out there. So could there be another restaurant out there, or hotel or something? Sure, makes that a lot more attractive when there's the infrastructure and the development there.
And maybe if you could elaborate too a little bit, what was perhaps the key differentiator with Paradigm compared to some of the other entities that you had said had expressed interest? What's special about Paradigm in this situation that opened us up to this?
Well, I think a lot of things. I think what's special about Paradigm, apart from this grant, is that, you know, the situation or the view or vision of the commission has maybe changed a little bit since the time the property was purchased. I think initially we all saw this as solely a retail parcel or place where retail could occur. And I think over time, the whole Mead area concept that we put together looked at mixed use and some different types of use. And really we have a little more realistic about retail and what the future of retail will mean in our community. So Paradigm hits that, checks that box. I also think the level of investment in development and the type of technology that Paradigm is using in its process and has the ability to bring investment of other kinds, not just to Yankton, but also to the whole state. The potential is something very much that the Governor's Office of Economic Development looks to when they look at giving this kind of grant. So this isn't like we're, you know, most grants where we're, you know, they're giving us, you know, 100 and we're matching 100. This is 100% grant here, the money that you're talking tonight, which is pretty rare for any type of state funding to not come with a match. So I think those reasons make it an attractive investment, not just for us as a community, but for the state, and that's really what sets it apart from other development projects that maybe have approached us about what can the state participate in.
I appreciate that overview because I think it helps us and the public understand that the timing of all this, of Paradigm coming, of the soccer improvements, it worked out really well that they all kind of have been able to help each other out and bring together what we hope is a real great development for the city, both economic development and quality of life improvements.
For those not memorized, the packet, that grant is $213,379. So it's a substantial grant. Any other questions from the commission? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. As stated earlier in our meeting, we do have an agenda item that was added to other business in order for us to finish up our initial CIP budget discussion today. So City Manager Leon is making her way back to the podium, and this time we're going to talk all things TID.
We're going to talk about two TIDs. So if you will look on the back of in your packet, or if you have the printed out sheet, we have some spreadsheets, budgets relating to TID number 11, which is the Gale Drive project TID summary, and 33rd Street, which is TID number 12. So just talking through them one at a time. Let's take Gale Drive first. So these, of course, are all estimates we are working with. These aren't final numbers, except for when it comes to, the grant commitments, et cetera, that we've talked about this evening. But looking at the estimated costs involved. So Gale Drive, we have the total estimated project construction cost to be $4.2 million. We will be making, or there will be an application made for an industrial road grant in the amount of $979. That would not go very far. $979,500. That's just about $1 million there. We talked earlier about some of the ARPA funding, so 1.5 committed there. Thrive committing $1 million. And then that leaving, if you're doing the math there, an estimated $720,500 in unfunded costs. And then the TID eligible costs there, we've done a little bit of accounting for you. $800,000 approximately in engineering, $1 million in construction. Both of those to be coming from Thrive. And then here's where we come in with the questions for you. So, the unfunded costs we have to cover from somewhere. And we have the ability to loan for, borrow from ourselves, so to speak. You hear us talk about that once in a while. Borrow from ourselves, that's $720,500. Of course, if there's other grants available to us or other funding sources that we can move into, and there may be, I don't know what's going to happen, we would pursue those things, but borrowing that money from ourselves from another fund to make up that cost. So that makes the total recovery cost then that $2.5 million plus interest from our internal loans. So why do we ask you about that? Well, we also can borrow that money outside, from the outside world, if you so choose. We kind of kick that around together as a staff to say, well, what's the best thing to do here? And, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference other than that interest rates are changing. If we borrow from ourselves now, then that might mean in the future, if we have a really tough year sometime in the future, which we could very well have, and we need to borrow for a project, we have to go to the outside market, and then we might be borrowing at a lot higher interest rate than we could borrow today. Also, this is a unicorn situation, but if we were, to the north of us, we'd be, and having the storm damage that some of the communities had to the north of us, we might have to borrow to, rebuild a city hall or a library or whatever could get, annihilated by a tornado. So those things can happen, but we wouldn't tell you, we wouldn't ask you if we weren't comfortable from borrowing that money from ourselves to make the TID work. We wouldn't make that recommendation. I don't know, and Al may want to chime in here if it really matters to us which way we go there, but thinking that that's probably offers us the most flexibility. Do you have anything, Al, that you want to add on that? With your
Not really. It's, again, that obviously we don't make 4% on our money right now, but if we were to go out and borrow in the public market, so to speak, that's the estimates we're hearing back from bond counsel on what it would cost. So we figured if we're going to fund this out of our own fund, we should replenish that fund to the tune of what it would cost us to go out privately. So the only obstacle is you are tying up some of your 506 money, but we're not talking a large amount. And again, we always have the ability anytime in the future, if we suddenly decide we've got a couple of 506 projects that we can't quite afford right now, and we really want to do them, we could borrow then. And again, then you'd turn around and have to pledge some other revenue source to pay it. But so all it really does is ties up some money that we do have right now that we can access private funds in the future if we need it.
And so, Al, that 4%, that is a percentage that you and other smart people internally have decided is appropriate. It's not a percentage that the state sets, for instance.
Yeah, and it was just based on what we were hearing for current estimates from bond counsel. So people much, much smarter than me, but.
When's the last time we borrowed from our utility councils at the HSC property?
Correct.
But this is a different situation because we have a mechanism through the TID to capture that expense and pay ourselves back.
Correct. And again, I would caution that it's a planned and estimated payback. If development didn't happen the way we thought, we'd be short then. So.
Are we okay as a commission to move forward as planned?
I think we have enough leeway there to change course if we need to, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Well, and you can still go back and talk about that more if you'd like while you're digesting the 33rd Street TID. That's a little more complex and certainly left up to, there's still some things yet to figure out here. About a $5 million total estimated project cost. You already acted that the land sale will go towards the project. When we acted on the land sale back in March or April, that was already acted on. Of course, 213 roughly in the LIP grant allocated towards the project, and then we had to get a little bit creative here to make this as easy as we can, or as fully funded as we can. So one of the things we're suggesting is we put $120,000 from our active transportation plan towards that project as a loan from general fund / second penny. It fits because that's definitely an area where we're going to have a lot of people circulating, especially with the soccer and with the Mead Cultural Center and the uses further to the north, and we hope, in the future, more development surrounding Paradigm. So we felt like that was a good fit. So that still leaves a lot of, unfunded there. So the TID eligible costs well, let's talk about that first. So that would be, we're recommending a $4.4 million loan from Second Penny and Utilities. Again, that 4% there. Your TID eligible costs are listed there below, so you can take a look at those. I won't read through them. But I do want to mention that there's a couple other things that we would suggest, and a couple other things to consider. The thing to consider is we're still working through with BY on what water service looks like there. So we're working through that, and there'll be more information on that forthcoming. And then, we think that future land sales that you make perhaps would be something that you could put towards this particular TID. There may be some that we're talking about other times before this is paid back that can be allocated toward that, and probably will be recommended by staff if it's this current staff to you. Also, many of you are aware that we've been paying out of the BBB about $70,000 to $80,000 relating to the Menards TID to make that whole, because that hasn't totally been made whole with the development that's there. Now, we think that in the next year or two, that will not be necessary anymore because there's been more things that have been built in that area. But since we're already allocating those dollars towards a TID, we would suggest perhaps continuing that just to soften this as much as we can. Again, I suppose it's the same argument. You can go out and borrow as well, but we do, have fund balances, and we're looking at, borrowing from other funds as well. And I know it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around because at home we can't, if we want to do an addition, you can't just go borrow from yourself. It doesn't work that way, but here, we have different funds that we can borrow from. So, and Al and Dwayne, if you have other things that you want to make mention of that would be useful for the commission, but some of you maybe, aren't interested in all the details, but we certainly want to be transparent about what we're planning to do here, because this will impact future budgets and future commissions when they're making decisions about the things you're talking about tonight in the 506. And so we just want people to have an opportunity to understand. And Dave looks like he wants to add something, and I'm sure it'll be a nugget that will be beneficial.
This is one of those strange situations where the city is actually the developer, and we've already made a commitment to soccer, which is not going to be a tax revenue generator. So the numbers look much different here in this tax increment district proposal than they typically would, like have in a Westbrook or a Fox Run, where you see that number kind of hitting where it needs to in year 14, 15, or 16. This number is never gonna hit at a point to cover it because of the obligations that we have to the undevelopable property to the west and to the north, even with the state ground on 33rd Street, which won't have taxable development on it.
Thank you, Dave. That's valuable for a couple of reasons. One, that's part of the reason why we're kind of putting these other things in for you guys to think about, but also because your gift to soccer isn't just the lease. It's about $2 million, close to $2 million in infrastructure improvements that if they were building, if they were a developer X, they'd be responsible for. So, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for the community there, but just bear that in mind that is something that the city is contributing here to make that all work together.
The only other thing, Amy, that I would suggest that we talk about briefly is kind of talk through the HFC land obligation, and you kind of alluded to that with future land sales, that we've been carrying that purchase cost as a loan from Second Penny, and we feel that going forward, there's a potential for enough land sales to pay back that obligation without continuing to carry that debt in the Second Penny. And so by kind of wiping that slate clean, that also frees up some additional funds in the 506 to loan for completion of this new project.
Dwayne, what is that amount of debt we still owe on that land purchase?
The original was about 1.5, and so it's probably about 1.2. I haven't done the exact math this year with all of the changes, but that's going to be pretty close, between 1.2 and 1.5 million.
Excuse me, it's real close to 1.2, and I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but I'll email that out to you, so.
If you look at your capital improvement plan, it has the original purchase cost in there, and I think that's 1.536, something right in that range. That shows up in the 506, and I carry that from year to year, so we kind of keep track of that obligation.
So if there's no more development there, worst case scenario, how short are we? Oh,
As Dave and Amy have kind of mentioned, you know, the commitment that the commission made is about $2 million in infrastructure. You know, I've done some rough math. You know, this will never be a TID that will fully realize the investment cost because of, you know, the decisions and the commitments that the organization has made. I think we can do the best that we can to make that as close as possible and try to be creative in some ways to make it happen. You know, staff's looked at active transportation plan, you know, the land sale commitment. There's additional development that's potential out there. I mean, I think there's a lot of upside, but realistically, there's very little chance that this would, you know, be able to meet the whole obligation for the improvements that are necessary.
And I think that's one, you know, the word gift was intentional because this is part of a contribution to that community type development. And I think there's, you know, that it makes people uncomfortable, but what can we do if we don't develop the infrastructure? We don't have the potential to develop more either. And I think it lends well to having development. Like I said, a hotel, a restaurant, or something like that, but the future is unknown. Dave, did you?
The best way to consider this is the TID in this example is just one of the many tools that's going to be necessary. The LIP grant was very specific to just the adjacent linear footage of infrastructure to the Paradigm site. It isn't for, technically in GOED's eyes, for anything else. You know, additional projects that could go north of Paradigm, there's other tools. There's, you know, you could allocate a sales tax reimbursement to yourself even, or something like that to help buy down this debt. And we're going to continually look for grants or other access to other funds if they're available with whatever the next project is. But it's not likely that a standard retail project will allow us to access outside funding. But we can keep thinking about tools available, and that, you know, the $2 million is specific to just that half of that they're talking about with the soccer association is specific to just that half of the infrastructure. It's not the entirety of the infrastructure even on 33rd Street, which is going to go on the north side of the soccer association. So it's an expensive project.
And of course, we will go through the public process with the budget as we do every year. But, you know, I wanted to take the time out because it's like been 2 or 3 years since we've had a TID. And I think many of you haven't been involved in the structure and financing of any TID. So wanted to take the time and step through that. And, you know, for example, if you allocate that future dollars that's currently being budgeted from the BBB to make the Menards TID whole to this TID, that's that amount less that you'll have flexibility on when you or future commissioners make decisions on BBB. So just things to keep in mind and have in your back pocket as we move through the process.
How good do you feel about the Gale Drive project as far as reaching that recoverable cost?
How good do you feel, Dave?
there's a lot of variables with any project, but that project, just like the one to the north, has the advantage of having a bird in hand with the Manitou, 65,000 square foot Manitou project. So there's a window in time, and that's right now. If you don't do it now and you lose out on that increment, you set yourself way behind. In that instance, Yankton Thrive is the developer. So they have more involvement, more obligation, and more responsibility. And that parcel, that piece of right-of-way has the opportunity for development on both sides of it. So it has a lot better chance of being made whole than the 33rd Street one.
Al, how much money do you have in the 506? Do you have 4 million?
I believe it's closer to 6-7 million right now. But, and again, but I don't want to make it sound like we're loaded with money. We've got lots of projects coming up, 20 years of them. So, but we feel like we have the ability to do the projects that are really necessary right now. The catch would be if we had some development that came along that suddenly surprises us that is not in our current 5-year plan. And that's when we would look at, if we need this project, whatever the developer that comes up, that's when we'd probably say, okay, we do have a need for that $506, so let's look at funding this privately. And again, that opportunity will always be there.
I would just caution, though, the cost is not going to be less than it is today. If you can get 4% today, interest rates are going nowhere but up. And you ought to lock in, if you can, lock in, a 4% rate for as long as you can, would be my advice. I wouldn't be gambling that I can get 4% money in a year from now.
I totally understand what you're saying, but 5 years ago, if you'd have told me that we could get 2% SRF money, I'd have told you you're crazy. And at that time, we were paying over 5% on our current loans. One of the other things that's going to happen this summer is I will be writing a letter to the DENR to pay off early loans 1 through 4. So again, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not any more of a soothsayer than City Manager Leon. But I do hear what you're saying.
Well, it just Wednesday the Fed meets again, and they're already talking 0.75% instead of 0.5% because of the increase in inflation. If that happens, the cost of money is going to start going up very quickly.
So just if I could add, one of the things that we really weighed when we looked at specifically the 33rd Street development is the fact that, in blunt terms, this project's upside down. So we're not likely to recover back the payments to pay those obligations. And so there will be a large chunk of that project that ends up being city infrastructure. We would have used second penny money to put a street in. We would have used utility money to put water and sewer in. In this case, it will be unlikely that we would recover it all. So if we went to the outside market, we would end up paying interest from those same funds in return, if that makes sense. So we'll end up paying interest either to ourselves or to a bank for expenses that we would have already incurred. It's complicated, and the math gets, it's, and at this point, as City Manager Leon and Al both said, it's a plan. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and that's why we tried to kind of make a spreadsheet, kind of show the flow of how we think it'll work. There's a lot of moving components, BY Water, and a lot of other partners in the projects that make them real tentative at this point.
Al, loans 1 through 4 that you said are going to be paid off here in the next couple months, what's that amount to? A couple $100,000?
For total going out, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's, I want to say it's close to 4 million yet.
No, I'm sorry. You're paying them off early.
Yes.
Yeah, what's that check going to be?
Again, close to 4 million
You're paying it off early
because we have the money on hand.
because we have the money on hand.
Yeah, in the
And
water fund.
What are we paying in interest on that?
Oh, on the amortization, again, I'll have to come up with that chart, but I don't have it right in front of me, but Dwayne might have it there.
Yeah, well, I'll have it here in about a couple seconds. I'll look at our debt chart, because I think that has all those loans listed. Let's see, water, 5, 6. Water loans, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3.5%, 3.25%, 3.25%, and 3%. That's 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 4 for water loans. I think these are outstanding balances between the 4 loans as of 12/31/19 was $3,887,910.08. So that number's a little bit dated, but Al's guess of 4 is probably give or take in the ballpark.
Probably closer to about 3.5 then if, again, we've got 2 more years of amortization on there, so.
So I guess then the point I'm getting at, my assumption was we were talking about something less than 4%. So you do feel that's the best use of those funds is to pay these off early rather than continue to take advantage of a rate that is pretty darn good.
Meaning, like you think it'd be hard to get that on the private market right now?
Well, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that again too, but I also agree that we've still got a lot of other debt in water, and right now, the current one that we're applying for is 2%, so we're trying to leverage the money we have on hand to get to the 2% figure again instead, so. And again, to try not to create more pressure on rates in the water department.
Understood. I guess, was that part of the plan all along, is to pay off those 1 through 4 early?
As we started the process of the wells and the plant itself about 10 years ago, the idea was to put the surcharge in place and to have the rates to pay off. Well, because of the delay in the process of building, to have the surcharge starting before we were at full debt service, we have just built up funds. So we always knew that there would come a time when we would sit down and look at the rates, look at the surcharges, based on when we're done with the 2 main projects, and that's where we're at. Those 2 are done, they're fully drawn, we won't be borrowing anymore, and we do have a good fund balance yet. So that's why I'll be looking at asking for permission. And again, it's a permission type thing. You can't just pay it back. The state has to agree to it, because it does create a little bit of pressure on them to redo their estimates and timetables. They were estimating that we'd be paying these loans off through the amortization periods of each one of them. And again, I don't have it right in front of me. I think a couple of them were coming up pretty close anyway, but it's probably a
2023 loan 1, 2029 loan 2, 2031 loan straight 4.
So it goofs up their system, and that's why they have their laws or rules, I should say, not law. They have a rule in place that you don't just pay it back because you want to. it has to work into their plan too. So they can turn around and tell us no. I've not heard that they've ever turned anybody down. But even paying it back early has only been within the last 8 to 10 years. You couldn't even do it before that. You had to pay the full time period, whether you had the money on hand or not. That's, again, another state rule that has changed as communities experience the difference of decreasing rates or decreasing interest, but they had these old loans at higher interest. It's something that it was pressure on the legislature to say, hey, we need to look at these rules. We need to work with our communities. The whole idea behind SRF is to help, not to create an impediment to rates and communities themselves, so.
And we paid off a wastewater loan early before, that was like 4% or 4.5%. So Al has been very good steward of putting the rates in place for the project so that we don't have any surprises. So one of the very early difficult discussions that we had with the project was we started a project that didn't have the rates in place. And it was an eye-opener.
When I started.
Yeah, it was an eye-opener to all of a sudden come back and say, oh, by the way, we're going to need this huge increase in utility rates because they weren't put in place before the project was started. So we, as a city, they've generally taken the strategy of put the rates in place, make sure everybody knows what's going on. If you build up a little cash, it's a good way to pay down debt early or cover unforeseen costs of a project. So we actually will be retiring one of the early SRF loans for wastewater, number 3, next year as well. So.
And the one that we did pay off did finally get permission again through increased pressure from communities to say, hey, state, you got to look at this. And that was when interest rates started dropping. But paying that off was through a private funding. That was the wastewater refunding series. And that debt service on that one ended last year or 2 years ago now. So we still had to go out and privately borrow to pay that one off early. Whereas right now, the water ones, we will be using our current funds, not borrowing to do it.
Any other discussion on what's being proposed? Any issues? Move forward as discussed. Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor, other than we'll come back on the 27th with that item on the Aquatic Center and give you a little more information.
Can I ask one more capital question that I didn't catch earlier? So under streets, this is part of the active transportation plan for this year? This TID, or is that for next?
I think we put it's the 20, did we put 2022 TID, or 2022 active into TID? I believe we did. Or was it 2021, 22?
It's the difference between the projects that we have proposed and the current balance in that resource, in that fund for doing active transportation projects, plus 40,000 that we have budgeted in 506 for transportation and sidewalk improvements. So it's an 80,000 general fund, 40,000 second penny, and that's why you see both listed. And in payback, both of those in the plan that we've developed would be first priority to pay back the general fund loan and the loan from the second penny for those active transportation projects, just because those would be the hardest to recover from, there's a lot of outstanding projects that need to be done there. that answers your question.
Yeah, and so what are the other active transportation projects that we're doing this year?
We had plans for additional sidewalk / trail along West Side Park around the street side of Summit. And then there was the 19th Street at Douglas location that we were asked to look at, as well as a location along West City Limits Road.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions on TID, CIP? All right, then we do not have any other business in front of the City Commission tonight, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual litigation and personnel matters under SDCL 1-25-2.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Anybody abstaining? All right, we are adjourned into executive session.